let's dive into it. This is Legendary Drops, and again, apparently there's some Witch gameplay footage in here as well. I've linked it in Twitch and YouTube. You check it out, but we're gonna watch it together here.
The chance to play Path of Exile 2 for 8 hours straight. You jealous? And you guys have no idea.
You motherfucker! Did you just literally ask if I'm jealous? Yes, I'm jealous. Yes, I am. Then I did play it myself, but that was 5 fucking months ago.
You guys have no idea what's in store for you. What's crazy is that you've seen the trailers, you've seen the reveals, but you don't know until you actually get your hands on it. Oh, God, is it glorious. We're talking about an Elden Ring Baldur's Gate 3 level step up in a genre that has needed it for far too long. Lord knows we didn't get that from Diablo. What a disappointment that was. Actually, you know what? This channel originally was supposed to be a Diablo channel. Most of my first videos were ARPG driven. I was talking about Last Epoch and Diablo, and if it wasn't for them, thank you, Blizzard, you guys jaded me into turning me into the industry commentator that I am today. So I actually kind of owe my career to you for making me so salty. You know, in the very beginning, when you're choosing your character in Path of Exile 2, all of the other characters get hung. They all die. Blech. It's so grotesque. It's so unhinged and depraved. There's so much respect for the audience and our maturity and the game's maturity. This game is unafraid to be itself. It is so authentic. And it's one of the things that I think games over the last few years have been missing. We've had a few, and this is definitely one of them. The game is absolutely incredible. It is a transformative experience. It was a game that I could barely put down. They basically had to drag me out of there to get me to stop playing it, and I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. I want to talk about how it felt, how it looked, and what the future of this game is going to look like, and how big of a deal this game is going to be. You guys, this is going to be a monster. I'm going to start off by saying, while I am an ARPG veteran, I am not an ARPG pro. My first isometric ARPG was Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 1 and 2, and then Champions of Norath, and then on to Diablo 2 once one of my friends got a cracked version for my mom's computer. While I love these sort of games, this genre hasn't changed all that much. The only thing that we typically see is some fidelity upgrades, some additional systems, or some expansions on existing ones. For most players, especially ARPG players, change isn't really necessary. The fact of the matter is, we just want more game to play, more loot, more classes, more skills, more bosses, and more hours to slowly become symbiotic with our computer chair or our couch. I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but ARPGs for me are kind of like meditation.
Such a good
While
way to
build
describe
crafting
it.
and comparing items requires you to be conscious, the gameplay itself doesn't. My brain seems to empty as I click through a level, tapping my same abilities over and over again, slowly disconnecting from reality as my screen is filled with visual effects. However, Path of Exile 2 is one of the first times that I've ever felt fully engaged by a game like this, and it's crazy how far they've taken things. When I got the chance to sit down and play the game at an underground event in Los Angeles, I played as the Witch, Monk, and spent most of my time on the Sorceress. From the onset, the character select screen where they all line up to be hung for their crimes, ending all of the characters other than the one that you choose, I screamed, finally, another game that isn't afraid to be insensitive, to shock, or to treat the players like an adult. I can't be the only one that has felt like, outside of a few outliers, more and more games have been trending towards these sort of soft.
You know, one of the cool things about Diablo 1 and 2 was because of how dark and scary the games were. For those of you who played Diablo 1, do you guys remember opening the little square-like room, hearing, fresh meat? And inside, you just see impaled corpses, blood on the ground, and out comes this big, chunky fucking butcher. Bro, I was in my early teens when I played that on PlayStation 1. And I played co-op, couch co-op with my little sister, who's actually going to be here for the subathon in December. And we shat our pants, dude. We were like screaming as we were running away from this guy. And that was just set the tone for the game. And, you know, fast forward to the ending of Diablo 1 with the, like, pushing the crystal out of the skull. It's just this boy. It's like all of these things. It was just very dark. And Diablo 4 has managed to pull a lot of that back, right? with their cinematics, like Nerel with Mephisto, absolutely insane. But the gameplay didn't really feel that. It felt to me like that was very stuck in the cinematic parts of it, but not in the actual gameplay. And PoE is bringing that into the gameplay in a very effective way.
Modern themes and art direction. Path of Exile 2 subverts this rule entirely by welcoming you into this desperate, grotesque, and beautiful world. Blood-spattered walls, ritual sacrifice, piles of burning entrails, and some of the most horrific creatures imaginable. This world intrigues you. It begs to be explored because of how forbidden it feels. Like you're 10 years old and you snuck in to watch a horror movie only to find yourself having nightmares for the next week. Oddly specific, I know, but my dad accidentally swapped my Power Rangers movie for Hellraiser. It's no wonder that I've never gotten a piercing. Everything from the character designs and fidelity to the sound design and environment is a cut above the rest. It's one of the most impressive sequels that I've ever played. I feel like in a lot of cases when it comes to sequels, most developers will just kind of phone it in. They reuse a lot of assets from their previous titles. They make minor improvements. They throw in a new story or a new character, but Path of Exile feels genuinely fresh, like an actual evolution of their original title. Spells and abilities are rendered beautifully. None of it was taking away from the game's performance, no matter how much was going on screen. Enemy attacks are clearly telegraphed and easy to read, no matter what environment you're in. Each zone I played in, whether it was the swamps, the forest, the farm, the town, or the manor, all of it looked visually distinct and interesting. There was something so intriguing about Path of Exile.
There's some really cool stuff they've done with weather-like stuff. There is an area in the early campaign where you go into a sewer, underground tomb-like area, but it's connected to the water side of the zone. So when there's a wave crashing in, that water like washes over the ground tiles that you're walking on, and you see this water washing underneath your feet past the area as you're playing. And then the water simmers down, lowers in level, and then another wave comes in and just washes over. It looks beautiful.
Art style and their direction in this game and how it's evolved over time. While it definitely borrows from a lot of popular fantasy and cultural history, it takes on a life entirely to itself. And in the case of Path of Exile 2, it tempted me to explore every area fully rather than just push on and grind. You'll hear me reference this a few times, but this game shares a lot with Elden Ring. Sometimes you just want to walk around and look at the game, look at its environments, and marvel at its architecture. Something altogether foreign in a genre like this.
I have played the game. That's not the case. That's not the case. I would consider myself an ARPG veteran. I don't know about this guy. That's not the case that I had at all. That's not my experience. My experience was there's so much shit to do and secret things and extra bosses and encounters you can engage with. That's why you explore. And that was very fun. I did not explore because the game looked good. I was, fucking marveling the astonishing looks of the game, the graphics, but I did not go to explore. In Elden Ring, I did, but that's an open world game. ARPGs, not it, man. Not it.
I'm sure some of you guys are going to find this odd, as it's not something that people typically go looking for in a game like this, but I was floored by the game's sound design. I think we've reached an apex where great graphics can't really impress you all that much anymore, and developers need to find other ways to intrigue players, and Path of Exile 2 does just that. The combination of the character abilities with the sound design engaged me far more than games normally do. The crack of a lightning spell, the swing of an enemy's giant axe slamming into the ground, the crunch of killing an enemy. There is this oppressive weight to all of it, and it makes the game feel real. You feel that impact. You feel the power of your abilities and that of your enemies, and there's a certain weight to all of that, and it just adds to the experience of playing this game. It makes it feel almost tangible at times. The music in the game is absolutely fantastic as well. They do such a good job of creating this oppressive atmosphere. That's the only words that I could really apply to it. Whether you're walking in an open field or you're in the forest or walking through the halls of a building, you feel this building tension at all times. And the boss fight music is even...
This is the reason why the first playthroughs I'm going to do... Normally, I play rock and roll and metal music. We have some other stuff as well, but that's usually what I listen to when I play ARPGs. But when the first playthroughs I'll do in PoE 2, I'm most likely gonna listen to the in-game music, and I've never done that in an ARPG game before. I've never felt like I want to do that because I always blast the music myself. But I'm gonna do that for the PoE 2, And that's a lot of props given to Camel, the lead guy for the music team that they have in the office. It's insane how good it is.
Better. It really makes it for an epic experience more than anything else. The game feels haunting at times. I love it. You know, I'm not somebody that normally gets caught up in things like sound design or the visuals of games, but I sit back and I'm looking at this game and how much quality it offers, and it's not even finished yet, and thinking to myself, this game is going to be free at one point. People are going to be able to play this for free. There are fully priced titles that don't deliver this kind of quality. And we're talking like the vast majority of fully priced titles don't deliver this kind of quality. I'm almost jealous of the people that get to play this once it's fully finished and that's their first time playing it, because it's going to be insane. I don't want to spoil anything for the narrative or anything like that. I think they've done a fantastic job with this, much better than they did with the first Path of Exile. I realize, I think I've talked to a couple people, they said that, you know, the first game's story was just kind of something thrown together, a vehicle just to get people through the game more than anything else and get them to the end game. But you can feel that they really tried to work hard on this, really tried to flesh out the narrative, the world design, all that kind of stuff. And it comes together in a way that's like truly holistic. It really feels well fit together. The voice acting is superb. Absolutely superb. I think that what's really unique about this experience with Path of Exile is that you're going to have people that will come to play this just for the story. And that's fine. And I think that's great to be able to make a game that will...
And that's a common thing in Diablo. People play it through the story and then they're done with the game. And that ain't worth the money, I'll tell you that. But people do that, and that's a common thing, because not everybody likes the whole replayability and the cycle content, resetting the characters and whatnot. They just want to go through and play the story, and that's okay. And I think PoE 2 is going to actually have, like Legendary Drops here is saying as well, like it's actually in a position where the story is going to be an interesting thing and enjoyable experience compared to how it is in PoE 1.
Do that, because ultimately you're just going to continue to bring people back, because eventually they will expand on some of that content later on down the road, and that's the way to get a lot of people through the door, at least at the start of things. We've seen that with Diablo 4. There was a lot of people that really liked Diablo 4 just for its story, and then they ended up sticking around and playing it longer than that. I think the same thing's going to end up happening to this game. But I wasn't expecting this to be as immersive as an experience as it actually is, and it's just because of how much work that has gone into really fleshing out this world and bringing up all of these other aspects of the game that, in a lot of cases in this genre, kind of goes by the wayside. People don't really pay attention to that because all the players can think about is, well, playing the end game, and obviously we're going to be getting to some of that stuff as well. But man, I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's actually kind of hard to describe what the experience is because it's just that great. But it gets even better. Isometric ARPGs are more known for being click-to-win games rather than anything else. While build crafting and randomized loot drive the experience, the combat has always been more of a vehicle that gets you into these game systems rather than the reason why you actually play these games. It's one of the things that I think that this genre has failed to evolve over the years. It's 10 years between Diablo 3 and Diablo 4, and the combat still hasn't changed that much. Even Path of Exile and Last Epoch don't really feel all that much different than a standard ARPG experience. However, Path of Exile 2 is the first real evolution in the genre, and I think it's going to make a huge impact on how this game is going to be received and how many people it's going to bring into its audience. Now, I mentioned this in my interview with the game's technical director, Jonathan Rogers, but every single fight, every pack of enemies, every boss feels like a meaningful experience. I jokingly said that Path of Exile 2 doesn't feel like a second monitor game anymore, but I really meant it. I was fully engaged in every conflict. Enemies hit harder than they normally do, and they have far more complex mechanics and abilities than they normally would in a game like this. You couple this with the game's dodge mechanic and its movement abilities that are actually tied to some of your abilities, and you have an experience where you are actively dodging, strategizing, and engaging with enemies rather than simply kiting them around. Boss fights are insanely well delivered, with many of the mini-bosses even having second phases, switching up their attack patterns and throwing unique combinations of attacks just to keep you on your toes. I struggled for a while at the final boss of the first act because I wasn't prepared for an actual boss fight, something more similar to an MMO than an isometric ARPG. Not only did I have to dodge their telegraphed attacks, but at one point, the boss would hide itself in a snowblind, and the only way for me to know when they were going to attack next was to listen to their call out and their voice lines. I had to wait until they stopped talking. This sort of design had me actively engaged while I was playing the game, and it had me floored, honestly. Half of the time, I was dying out of sheer shock and joy, struggling to believe what I was seeing and loving every second of it. But I think what sets Path of Exile 2 apart from any other ARPG, and in a lot of cases, just a lot of games in general, is its use of spell and ability interactivity. Throw up an ice wall and then throw another attack to shatter that ice wall and send those shards forward. Cast a ring of fire around yourself and send out bolts of electricity to combine it with the fire damage and deal increased damage to enemies. Path of Exile 2 had skill gems that could trigger other skills, but we now have abilities that react to one another in gameplay, creating an infinite amount of possibilities. You have AoE attacks on the witch that will actually cause your summons to deal more damage or explode them for extra damage. You have combo abilities on the monk that will transform the attack of another skill. There is so much to play around with here, and you're constantly thinking about what kind of crazy combinations of abilities that you can come up with, and it just makes you want to play the game more.
I love
player agency is something that I think is sorely lacking in games today. I think it's one of the reasons why we saw games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Elden Ring reach such incredible heights. It's because players want to feel like their character is their own, that their playthrough is their own, and when you combine with how engaging the combat is, with the increased movement and the skill expression, players are going to latch onto this in a way that I don't think that they were expecting to. I mean, the distinct nature of the classes alone are going to knock players on the floor. While I only had the time to play as a few characters, I was shocked with how differently each class played. In a lot of games, a ranger is effectively a physical damage mage. Many abilities even share the same function or look, but in Path of Exile 2, I'm flipping in the air, I'm dodging around, I'm slowing down enemies and trying to create distance. With the Sorceress, I'm tactically trying to place my spells so I can combo them together for extra damage. With the Monk, I'm waiting until enemies get to low health. I'm finishing them off to get a combo charge and then use that to power up another ability and take out a group of enemies. Path of Exile 2 feels like the breath of fresh air that the ARPG genre has been gasping for. A game that redefines what it means to engage with combat, build variety, and player agency. It's not just the continuation of Path of Exile, it's a transformation, a step forward that challenges the stagnant design philosophies that we've come to expect from this genre. Every moment feels deliberate, from the unique playstyles of the classes to the intricate interplay of the spells and abilities and the sheer thrill of combat itself. This game asks for your full attention, rewards creativity, and respects your time and skill. If this is where the future of ARPGs is heading, then it's about time that we left the old paradigms behind and embraced something new. Path of Exile 2 doesn't just promise an evolution, it delivers one. And honestly, I can't wait to see how it changes everything. I'm getting the exact same vibes that I got when I was playing Baldur's Gate 3 in early access. This overwhelming frustration that I know about something and I've been playing something and everybody else has no idea how great it is. And all I want to do is just tell them. I want to shake them and wake them up and say, this is going to be the best thing ever, because I really do think this is going to be one of the best things ever. They took quite literally every single aspect of their previous game and improved upon it in a meaningful way. And then on top of that, they didn't sacrifice any of the depth and any of the quality that they had before. All of the things that this franchise is known and loved for are still here.
Yes.
Everything is still here.
That's what we've been told.
It's just better, or it's easier to engage with. You feel the respect and attention to detail throughout the entire game. It's remarkable what they have done with this game, and I think it really...
You know, it's funny to listen to him. Like, it feels like he's exaggerating from time to time, but he really isn't. Like, I've played it quite a lot. He isn't exaggerating. I saw someone in chat saying that he exaggerates. I don't feel like it sounds like he is, but I've played it. He's not exaggerating. If anything, it's the other way around. Like, it's hard to explain how fucking good this game feels and looks when you're actively in it. It's enthusiasm, it's passion. Sure, I'm a bit biased because I love Path of Exile. I get that. I just don't feel like he's exaggerating. I feel like it's almost the other way around. Because I played it and it's so fucking good.
Really does come back to this idea that Jonathan Rogers brought up in my interview with him. And it's just that they made the game that they want to play, and they just hope that other people share their taste. And for me, it feels like a game that was made for me. This game feels like what little kid LD was thinking games would look like when he grew up. This is the game when I was sitting around slamming flaming hot Cheetos, jamming out to Iron Maiden and playing Champions of Norath. This is the game that I thought would come out. And it's coming. And it's great. What's crazy about all of this is that it's not even done. We're talking about a game that's going to be in early access. Only half of the campaign, only half of the characters, and who knows whatever else they want to go ahead and throw into the game. We're not even talking about the seasons that are going to come then after. There is such a bright future for this game, and I want to talk about it. In early access, this game will only feature the first 3 acts of the campaign, which totals a staggering 25 hours of story content with a complete endgame experience, including
Okay. He used the word staggering. Staggering amount. I think it's going to be 20, 25 hours campaign content for someone who's new to the game. I think most of us that's going to blast is going to pull it off in 5 to 10 hours. Probably less.
including 7 endgame systems for progression as well as character ascendancy, which unlocks class-specific subclasses.
No, you can do couch co-op on a PC as well as Simplex.
That launch with this level of content,
at least that's what I've been told.
Players get to play all of this in early access. Once this game is fully released, it's going to be a behemoth that will only continue to grow in content. And what I love the most about all of this is the ability to get in on the ground floor. I can't be the only one that avoided Path of Exile at times because the game just got away from me. The more content was added, more league mechanics were introduced, I just felt like the game had too much to learn. The game had gotten too far away from me, and I didn't have the time to learn it. Path of Exile 2 marks a fresh start and an open door for new players to come in at a somewhat even ground level with veteran players. And I think that that's going to have a massive impact on this game's success. For the unanointed who haven't played Path of Exile 1, I'll break down what exactly is going to be delivered and why it's such a big deal. At the preview event that I attended, they had mentioned that they had came to the realization that having players test the endgame and grow the endgame before the game's release was the most important thing to do, and it was also the easiest thing for them to do, which makes a lot of sense. They've been making seasonal content for a few years now, so putting out that kind of content and growing the endgame is probably pretty easy for them. On top of that, this is what many of the players come to play their game for. This is what the majority of the concurrent audience is going to be consuming. So it's incredibly important that this part of the endgame and this part of the game is fleshed out and ready for launch. Now, that's not to say that the campaign or story is phoned in or anything. It's incredible. It's obvious that they put a lot of care and effort into this game's campaign, and I think people are going to be shocked by how great it is. However, people come to these games for their end game, and it needs to be meaty enough to keep people playing.
It's so funny listening to creators saying, "Oh, people come for the end game," because it's like it's become this thing that people say now, which PoE veterans have been saying for the past fucking decade. And then when other games launches, like Diablo 4, for example, suddenly that wasn't so important anymore for everyone that was hyping up and talking about how good D4 was. Every video that was talking about that, they never mentioned that part. The most important part of the game just didn't exist. And now, when that has been coined and well communicated to the public, people have just started, running with the wind. They just turn their coats and be like, "Oh shit, right. Oh, we forgot about that one thing that was like the most important thing for this entire game genre," and now they're emphasizing on it. But all of the content creators that hyped up D4, they didn't mention the shit about that during the D4 times.
It's funny that a Diablo-like game understands this better than Diablo itself. With that said, in Path of Exile, players get to create their own endgame experience. You don't have to engage with all of the mechanics in Path of Exile, and I'll be honest with you, it's not recommended to do so in the first place. Find the ones that you enjoy, learn everything about them, and then farm out the unique rewards and grow your character's power and continue forward. Now, only for early access, because we don't have the other 3 acts of the campaign, players will run through the campaign a second time on a higher difficulty. Later, this is going to be removed once the game is fully released. Once you've reached the end game, you'll get access to the Atlas map, this huge map with its own skill tree that accompanies it, and you get to cultivate your own end game experience through these systems. This is going to be huge for new players because the original game had such a massive backlog of content that it was hard to know where to start. And when we're starting with 7 endgame activities, that's already enough. But this is going to be something where players are going to be able to test everything, find what they like, and move forward with whatever they want to play for their endgame. While 7 endgame systems sounds like a staggering amount for most games, it's a drop in the bucket for Path of Exile, and I think this more condensed early access experience is going to lead to far more new player retention than the studio likely expects. What's crazy about all of this is that Path of Exile's early access is $30 USD, and it doesn't feel like an early access game. It feels like a complete polished experience with staggering depth. From the 3 acts of the campaign, which alone provide 25 hours of story content, to the 7 distinct endgame systems, it's a package that rivals, if not surpasses, many full-price titles. And of course, Grinding Gear Games does the most consumer-friendly thing.
When you fight this boss, guys, these ghosts, step on them. Step on them. They disappear. If they get to him, he gets giga buffed, and he will fuck you up. Step on them.
Possible by making sure that those supporter packs also give you
Watch
$30 of in-game currency.
There you go. Now
enough
he's super
for you to
buff.
use to buy some cosmetics and maybe even some stash
look at his
tabs.
life.
It's a transparent and fair way to support the game while also getting yourself set up with some customization and convenience as you dive into this massive
he's just
game.
letting him ramp.
Path of
Holy
Exile
shit.
2 is raising the bar not just for
Making the fight much
ARPGs,
harder.
but for what players should be expecting from games in general. And I haven't even gotten into the fact that the game is going to double the amount of classes it has
Vaccine
once
much?
it actually
Yeah.
launches. 12 classes to play as. That's insane. There's so much content that's going to be
Infernalist
served to the audience.
is my starter.
And for most people, they're not even going to have to even pay for it. You can support it if you want. You get early access, but you don't have to. You just go play it for free once it's fully released.
Wait for them to realize that GGG listens to players. That is a good comment. That's a good comment.
Crazy to me. It's crazy. There's so much value for the customer, so much value for the player. You know, when I was sitting at the event, I tried to be mindful. I tried to be professional and take notes and look at minute details and think about what kind of content that I could serve to my audience. But instead, I was just enjoying myself. I was just jamming the game, having a great time. I sat next to Wolfhard FPS, another YouTuber, a good buddy of mine, and I just kept looking at him and going, damn, this is good. And he's like, yeah, it is. And everybody at the whole event was like that. Everybody was just so excited and just enjoying the game so much. And what makes me really happy about that is the gaming community is going to receive it the same way, which gets me even more excited.
This brings up a good topic, which is also asked by chat. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I'll read the chat. A question out loud. Godrobe10 wrote, are you afraid that they might taste the forbidden fruit of casuals and cater towards their needs while abandoning the hardcore PoE 1 fanbase? That was originally a slight concern I had when I first played it. And as I played it more and more, it was very clear that that was not going to be the case. And then we saw the endgame stuff and the crafting. The crafting is a very touchy topic for me personally because I love crafting in PoE 1. And when they first initially said, well, we're not going to have any other crafting methods except that we're going to make things that whatever orb you use for the item will never take away power, always add power. I was a little concerned because that would just make the crafting system very, very generic and very simplistic. And I don't like that approach to it. And in the reveal, they were like, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to make sure we have advanced crafting for the veterans and the complexity that is similar to that of PoE 1 with the omen crafting and stuff like that. So you actually can dive into meta crafting, and you also have the things to make it a little easier in terms of things like the essence crafts and whatnot. But you do have to keep in mind that for the economy, which is very important, which they've also said that they believe is important, is very, very, very fragile. They have to deal with that very carefully. And in PoE 1, the golden standard of trading in the currency market is based of you having access to things like currency sinks. That would be Chaos Ores being the most commonly currency to be consumed when using the crafting bench. Then there's some for Exalted and the meta crafts are locked behind Divines. Now in PoE 2, there won't be a crafting bench. So now the economy has to be based on what the currency sinks will be. And that's going to be whatever the most commonly used crafting or currency is going to be used for crafting your gear, which seems, based on what we've seen so far, to be annulment orbs of all things. So that's going to like set the tone of which gold currency is going to be the baseline standard for trading, since you don't trade with gold. And to go back to the whole idea of them catering too much to casuals, I personally feel like they're It was scary at first, but with the reveals and information we've seen, they are not abandoning any sort of complexity. They're just doing it in a much better way for PoE 2. So no, I'm not concerned about that at all anymore. But I was originally.
Excited because it's just going to be a bunch of people that are going to be like, this is awesome. And then somebody else is going to
People asking not GCPs. No, because GCPs has a finite limit. You can only quality so many gems. Now you're done. Then you're done. There is no more sync for that character after that. A null is going to be used in most crafts together with omens on a consistent basis. So that's why, from what we've seen, that I believe that's going to be the baseline currency instead of chaos orbs.
be like, I know, right? And yeah, that's what you want. It's the reason I got into making videos. It's one of the reasons I play games to begin with. I miss those days back when I used to work at GameStop and Halo would launch or something like that, and people would just be losing their minds. And this is a game that people are gonna lose their minds. For 8 hours, I played this game, and I loved every second of it. They had to peel me off of that chair at the end. I literally played until they were shooing us out the door. And you can see how much these developers understand their game, understand their audience, and know what they're trying to deliver. It is on display across the entire game in a way that we very rarely see, and it is something incredibly special. You'll be seeing more Path of Exile content from me, by the way. I have a few more videos that are planned, a couple other things that I want to dive into. There's a certain type of video that you guys may have seen on this channel that has yet to come out for Path of Exile, and believe me, oh, it's coming. But, man, I can't wait for this game to release. I can't wait to play more of it. I can't wait to talk about more of it with you guys, and I also can't wait to see what the reaction of the rest of the industry is going to be. Usually this is about the time that we start to see some people pop up and say, want to throw their 2 cents into the bucket, and it usually ends up being a little bit tone deaf, but who knows? Maybe everybody will just universally like it and that'll be the end of the story. Yeah, probably not. Anyway, Exiles, we're going in. I'm going in on this game. Get ready to log in.
Give him a like, boys, and I'm going to share the video in the Twitch chat and the YouTube chat. Here's the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a like and subscribe for more content, and drop a comment down below what you guys think of the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. So till then, stay safe and keep rocking, everybody.